Adriana Ducassi. I am a writer, filmmaker, director, actor, and I'm actually here with a film. It's called The Eternity of Grief. It stars my dog, Marlo, and he is a total movie star. Now, it's about him going through all 5 stages of grief when I leave the house. So if you have a dog, you know that experience. I also have worked extensively in the digital space. I made, with my co-creator and husband, Nick, we made a series for Netflix. It was a digital sketch series that went for 2 seasons. We've worked for brands like LA Times, LA Taco, and now in addition to filmmaking, we make series for various brands through Ducassi Inc.
Wonderful.
Hi everyone, I'm Susan Lee Towers. I just got married a month ago. And I'm the Senior Vice President of Brand Partnerships and Marketing at _Talent. We're a 360 talent management company that focuses on digitally native talent, and we represent creators across every vertical: entertainment, comedy, fashion, beauty, lifestyle, culinary, gaming, esports, you name it. And I really help to bridge the gap between brands and bringing opportunities to our creators across every category you can imagine. And it's just one piece of the puzzle when it comes to kind of how we grow our creators, both digitally and physically across a globe. But yeah, that's a little bit about what I do.
My name is Wynter, and I'm a digital strategist and writer and podcaster. I have owned my own company for the last 14 years, managing celebrity talent and helping them build their digital branding. So started out just doing social media management when nobody knew what that meant, and then it broadened it into helping build and extend clients' digital brands. I work with a number of talent: Margaret Cho, Wanda Sykes, John Mulaney, Olivia Munn, John Carpenter, Cameron Crowe. I spend a lot of time just helping them extend their footprint, understand what their audience is, who their audience is, what they want, and because all of my clients are over 40, keeping them young-minded and still take risks like how they started out, and they seem wholly receptive. Some are a little bit more, you'd be surprised who's more resistant and has to be pushed, but that is primarily my focus. And I also had a podcast for years called Pop Rocket and Waiting to Exhale, and spend a lot of time guesting on friends' podcasts and being wildly chaotic on social and my own platforms.
Love that.
My name is Rebecca Rusheen, and I'm a digital agent at Gersh. For anyone who isn't familiar, Gersh is a global boutique agency that really focuses on a hands-on approach for all of our clients across all areas of entertainment. I've worked in digital in a talent agency for about 6 years, which in digital years is a small lifetime. But the type of talent that I'm interested in representing are digitally native creators who are true multi-hyphenates, and they're interested in crossing over into other areas of entertainment to expand their businesses.
Hi, I'm Jessie Komitor. I'm a filmmaker. I have a short here called Chasing the Party, which is screening which is screening on Saturday, tomorrow at 7 p.m. And before that, I had right out of college, I had a web series called People of New York. And I did, writing, pitching, directing, acting, all that fun stuff.
Yeah. Well, thank you all very much. And you Wynter, you actually kind of led me into where I want to go, which is I'm a little bit about me. I'm with EqualPride. We're the parent company of Out and the Advocate, which is LGBTQ media, or if you saw me go viral, I'm in queer media. So a few people, yes. So a few people saw that, and Wynter, it's interesting because people started to say to me, well, you're an influencer now, and I'm like, well, I don't know what to do. And I have always kind of been I will say, as someone who considers themselves an artist, judgmental about influencers. And so I had to really look at that and discover that this is really actually a really beautiful community of bright people. So I want to go to the filmmakers first and ask you what your relationship to this online branding and the influencer world is, because it's all critical to success at this point, is branding. So I'll go to you first, Adriana.
Sure. I think there is, first of all, I think everyone is creative, and I think everyone is an artist. And I think that these mediums now allow for everyone. It has sort of democratized the ability for everyone to have an outlet for their creativity. There are also people who have studied the craft of filmmaking, the craft of writing, and it can feel like, how do I, as a filmmaker, as a writer, as an actor, how do I use this space that seems like it's just for influencers and people that are making like 7-minute videos and pointing at things and suddenly they go viral, and it's like, that doesn't feel like that's what I do. And I think if we look at the different social media platforms as the new distribution, it's just a place for your stuff to get seen. And as a filmmaker, you have to adjust your voice and your creations to that medium so that it works. Like, you know, something that's seen on a screen this big is different than something that's seen on a giant screen. But it's still an ability for you to be seen and make art, and you don't have to be an influencer, I think, to use it. That's how I see it.
Yeah, wonderful, thank you. And how about for you, Jessie?
Well, first of all, Tracy, I'm very much so in your boat. I'm like, I'm not well versed in influencer. I'm going to put it that way.
Yeah.
I am a filmmaker, and I want to reach an audience. So the first thing I did out of college is I made this tap dancing short film on a moving subway in New York City that was a single shot, and it's called Q Train Connection. And I just did it because I couldn't stop thinking about it. And I think those are the things you kind of have to make. And I said, in order to do this, you have to get scrappy. You know, you got to get your friend to get your camera. You know, I didn't need sound because it was music playing, but like have great sound, and that's it, you know, and then just get it up there. And that's kind of what I did. And I used it as a platform. And then what I did is I just reached out to different outlets myself. You know, I didn't have PR, I didn't have anything like that. And Huffington Post and all these places started writing about it. And that's how it ended up getting traction. And I realized, oh, that's kind of the way to do it, you know? Make your own work, make something you're really passionate about that you believe in, and make it yours, make it your unique voice. Get it out there yourself, and it will pick up some traction if it's something you believe in.
Thank you for that. And then, Wynter, I would love to go back to you and have you talk a little bit more about the, you know, guiding people through a resistance to this branding. I mean, for me, part of it is
Which resistance?
to putting themselves out there, or you know,
Okay.
or you can, you know.
Oh, okay, that resistance, or their personal resistance.
Yes.
You know, you'd be surprised. They don't like, they have sometimes have a very old school mindset about, because a lot, you know, every single person I work with came up through an era where you had to be on The Tonight Show, and that indicated fame, and the cover of, you know, Newsweek, and that indicated fame. And that does not, you know, Ryan Reynolds was on Time Magazine yesterday. That doesn't necessarily mean he's that relevant. It definitely means that he's being talked about and there's a conversation around him, but that doesn't indicate relevance to a 10-year-old who's watching YouTube. They don't know Deadpool, like they know him in the costume. So it really means that you have to be intentional on your platform when you're putting content out there, and you have to do it whether you will get pickup from a magazine or not. You just have to be consistent. And I think for them, you know, sometimes, you know, I sit here and I'm in this conversation right now, and I think to myself, these people that I work with did everything in that era where they did those things. They started a Facebook page, they had a MySpace page, they did all those different things, but what does that mean now? I think we really have to like explore what that is today. I would rather sort of go into what I would tell you to do now than use my clients, because they all have huge platforms. John posts, I have tickets on sale, they sell out. That's the end goal. But if you have somebody that is younger and like starting to think about what they want to do, I think it has to be a combination of things that you like to put out there, things that you think you're good at, and being really demonstrative about it, and also kind of keeping a watch on who else is in your space, in your field, doing it, collaborating with them if you want to, but kind of trying to always create ownership of what you're doing and really be owning it. And be confident about it. And also, my big thing lately has been telling people, be a good storyteller, but touch grass. Do not try to aspire to be something that you are absolutely not. It might work for 5 seconds, and then you're gonna be exhausted, and then you won't wanna even touch it anymore.
Yeah, thank you for that. Appreciate it. And Susan, would you talk a little bit about what that looks like from your marketing standpoint and how integral being online is to success?
Yeah, absolutely. I think at the core of it all, it really is about building community, right? And so I think that the people who are the most successful on our roster have spent a lot of time cultivating their community that exists online, right? And so that is kind of step one. And then, everyone's goal outside of that is to create arms and legs outside of their digital footprint, right? So while it starts on the digital side, it's really about creating a depth of, a community that cares about what you're saying, about the content that you're creating, and fostering that relationship. I think there's a lot of emphasis sometimes put on the numbers of views and the reach and how viral things are. And ultimately, that really isn't what drives what is meaningful. It's the depth of the relationship you have with your community that actually ends up being the most important piece of the puzzle at the end of the day. Even when you're working with brands, some of our creators that have 100,000 followers are getting paid 10x what somebody who has 1 million followers has, because the brands are noticing that they are the right audience that they're targeting, that they have a really deep connection with their community that cares about the things that they're talking about. And so I think that, there should be a lot more emphasis on kind of the community that you're building with the audience that you have. And if you, like Wynter mentioned, if you are creating content that you're passionate about, your audience will follow you wherever you go.
100%.
Yeah, thank you for that. And then, Rebecca, would you talk about, from the point of view of being an agent?
Definitely.
Yeah.
I think the core of why I'm so passionate about what I do is that the digitally native talent that I represent are creatives and are storytellers. And I think I'm, as we all probably are, fighting against this stigma that social media is cat videos and dancing and silly memes, which it obviously is comprised of a lot of those things. But I think, to Susan and Adriana's point, I think on a macro and a micro level, I think, Adriana, you hit an amazing point of it just being this incredible system of distribution that if you're not taking advantage of, you're really missing out. And I think, Susan, to your point, on a more micro level, I think there's also such incredible kind of niche communities to be found on all of these platforms that are embracing artists and creatives and storytellers. And I think, it's a tool for you in yourself, but it's also a tool to find collaborators.
Yeah, thanks, everybody. Jesse, you mentioned kind of having to be scrappy.
Yeah.
And, I can just say anecdotally, I work in queer media. I went viral. Our stories about me going viral didn't get any traffic. But I had an ex texting me from Australia saying they've been talking about you on the news for 5 minutes. So, so digital.
And you were completely validated. Yes.
So, the digital and mainstream media, we're not even mainstream, but it doesn't always connect. So I wonder, Jesse, would you go a little bit deeper and talk about kind of really DIYing
Yes.
your art.
Absolutely.
When you can't rely on mainstream media. I mean,
Totally.
I can say I get literally hundreds of pitches a day,
Wow.
and I have to try to figure out what can break through.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah, it's crazy. Like, you get out, well, at least for me, I got out of school, and as an actor, not a lot of jobs were coming. I always saw that, like, there was another, I had a really active imagination, and I would kind of always lean in that direction and came up with these fantastical stories, and that is kind of what spiraled into People of New York, and I just kept dreaming of this kind of ridiculous mockumentary series about New Yorkers, and I would play each New Yorker, and I would play a boy from the Bronx, and I would play my overbearing Jewish mother, and how do I make this, right? And it's a series of shorts, right? And I was like, great, they can be 5 minutes each, you know, let them be digestible, let them be something that people can just sit down, watch, laugh, move on, and then continue to do it. You know, what's my budget? Can I make 5 shorts for $5,000? How do I raise that money? Going on to Seed and Spark to like get the funds and get collaborations, and literally making each one for $1,000 a piece, and knowing that my goal was to make 5 of them. So it wasn't about making one video, it was about creating a series of videos, and I think that looking forward, you could do that and say, okay, my goal is I'm gonna make 20 videos. How much money do I need? How many favors can I get? And kind of construct something for yourself that you can distribute it, you know? Like, okay, every Wednesday, and then I'm gonna have, this is what I did at least, I had a lead up of this episode's gonna come out, you know? And that's kind of how I got into writing and directing and making my own work and becoming a filmmaker. And I think it's important to do, you know? You don't need the big budget to make your vision come to life. And I think that if you have it and you have this thing that's haunting you, go out and make it, grab a friend, and I'll say this one more time, just make sure the sound is good. If the sound is good, I only spent money on my sound person. That was my main fund, was just, and then, you know, no one will know the wiser.
That is the most important thing that will be said all day. That one thing.
Well, Adriana, I'll go to you as well, because you have a short film to promote. And would you talk a little bit about, I mean, you have also a pet, which makes it easy. I mean, that's your best tool. But would you talk a little bit about how you're DIYing that? I keep wanting to say DEIing, and you know.
Also very topical.
Important.
Very precious. I think, you know, it used to be that, yeah, you had this like studio behind you, and you're talking about the marketing of something?
That you've put your heart and soul in.
I think it used to be that you had people who were paid specifically to do the marketing thing, do the thing. And now, you know, in addition to learning how to use a camera, frame your shots, write a script, do, you know, color correct, do literally everything. Now on top of that, it can feel really overwhelming to be like, okay, and I have to learn how to be a marketer, I have to distribute, I have to, you know like in what frame this picture is gonna, I mean, it can be really maddening. I validate the frustrations around that as filmmakers, because you just want to make your thing and have somebody else take care of that. And the only thing that I would say is that, like, in the year of our Lord 2025, this is like the situation. I think just teaching yourself the skill, there's plenty there's plenty on YouTube, plenty of places where you can learn how to do these things. It's a skill that you can use not only for your own work, but you can also then parlay into getting paid for down the line, where you now have this skill of being able to market your own stuff. If you end up working for a brand, they're going to want to pay you because you know how to now do that skill as well. Boots on the ground for our film, it was a matter of, what works on social media versus what works if I send it to my mom. Like, she's already bought into me, so I can send her the version of a trailer, for example, that is like my artistic vision. But if I'm gonna post a trailer online, the very first image has to be my dog's face, because people who don't know me need to immediately know this film is about a dog and he's cute as hell, and like, yeah, I will like keep watching this, because right now it's like, people are just kind of like Tinder choosing like what content they look at, and it's instant. It's like 0.3 seconds. So I think the biggest thing in terms of like DIYing your like your own marketing is, what is the first thing that you can put out, the first image, the first frame that's gonna hook someone and let them know this is something I wanna keep watching. And you learn that over and over again, and hopefully you get good at it and everybody watches your things, and it's great.
Yeah, great, thank you for that. And then, Wynter, you mentioned you had a podcast, and so I wonder, would you talk about any lessons you learned from kind of marketing your own content that you've brought to your clients?
Are you talking about my podcast, or like the content I bring for my marketing, which part, sorry?
Well, I imagine you would have marketed the podcast, so I wonder if you learned any lessons from kind of
From
how...
what I do with my hub?
Yeah.
Sorry.
There's a little echo, so I'm sorry if I can't quite hear.
I found that the best thing to do was to be on other people's podcasts. Having a it's an oversaturated market. Having a podcast, a pop culture podcast, is not unique or new. But it was more important that I connected with the people that were guests on our show, and then as our show, we were on a network, the first one grew, I would make sure to be on other shows and market it that way, and do ad swaps, and basically, a promo for a promo type promotion. And also, I spent a lot of, back when it was amazing on Twitter, I spent a lot of time I would have to say, like, my Super Bowl on Twitter was the Oscars or the Emmys. Because it's pop culture, or whenever anything, that wasn't too, I'd be lying if I didn't get involved in a salacious conversation, but something that had, don't be silly, but back in the day, it was really helpful to sort of get into a conversation and really just park myself for 5 hours. And I've been to the Oscars. It's more fun to be on your couch talking about the Oscars than being at the Oscars. And that was a way to sort of engage with people and have people react and do stuff in real time. And now that Twitter is just not, Blue Sky can't do it. They're too earnest. Threads, it's really getting harder to sort of have that reaction. So I've had to adjust my strategy, and it's moved to stories. So I'm reacting into real time on stuff in IG stories, and I have quite a ridiculous audience of people who just like the babble that I push out. But just reacting in real time to things, I find that people are waiting for me to say something about something, and then I'll bake a bunch of stuff I need them to see, like I was on Screen Drafts, and then I'll jump into that thing. So being able to also just pivot, because these platforms are not forever, and they are not friendly. They don't care about you. They have zero interest in you. They're not trying to help you. I don't care how many partner managers they have. I don't care about any of that. Creator funds they've created. They don't care about you. So the most important thing for you to do is own your audience and be able to pick up your shit and say, okay, bye, and when you have to do it. So building an email list, it sounds old school, but it works. Being platform agnostic, not just sort of spending too much time in one place and forgetting about the other place, and just being intentional, again, about what you're placing, where you're placing it, and building that community. I mean, Susan could not have been more right. You really need, when people follow you, if you're like, I'm off Twitter and goodbye, there were so many people that I followed to the other place because I want to continue to engage with them, and you want to have the same thing. And you have to be able to do that. You can't be committed to one place, and you have to, I just really want to emphasize, own your audience. Do not let your employer own the audience. Do not let, bring your people with you and let them know where you will be should anything go down. Twitter really collapsed a lot of people's voices, and and people have not recovered. And we're still like crawling through like the ashes, like The Walking Dead, finding each other. Oh, you're here. You know what I mean? Oh, thank God, I found you. and then now we're a spinoff. So just, there's no love lost between me and Meta, period. There's no love lost between me and Twitter. I will never call it X. You just really need to be committed to what you've grown. Keep an eye on everybody that engages with you, follows you, DMs you, and just move and let people know where you're going to be.
Yeah. Thank you so much.
Yeah.
Susan, would you talk about how you approach a smaller project? Because there are big studio projects that get so much love. And, then someone's really beautiful art film can easily be overlooked.
100%. And we deal with this a lot because I definitely work with large corporations that have tons of money to spend, including like all of the studios and networks that do come to us to work with our creators for various projects that they're promoting. But I think it really comes down to building relationships. And there's a lot of times that people come to us and say like, hey, listen, I don't have a huge budget for this, or I have no budget for this. But, really it is about building those deep-rooted relationships with people, because at the end of the day, the people that will show up, even if it's not paid for that moment, they will show up for you if you build those relationships. And it's also why, we have brands that come to us and say like, hey, we're throwing this event, this is not paid, but, down the line, we are planning to do some paid partnerships, and we always send our clients to those non-paid events because it's about building those relationships with the brands. If you show up for the brands when it's free, they're much more likely to pay you down the line because you've spent that time to meet them, build those relationships. So I would really emphasize building those relationships, networking. Networking is so crucial, even for anybody working in the industry. My job now, somebody, one of the partners at my company I worked with when I worked in the mailroom at CAA 15 years ago, and he was a receptionist, and I worked in the mailroom. We're now working together, executives at our company 15 years down the line. Those relationships that you're building now are going to stay with you as long as you foster them.
And can I just piggyback real quick, Susan?
Yeah.
All of my business is word of mouth. And that took time, that is because I really spent a lot of time when I started the company having more, frankly, being intentionally viral. I worked with Charlie Sheen and did Tiger Blood and created Tiger Blood. Please don't throw that in my face.
Hey, it worked.
It worked. And essentially he started my business though, because I started working with people that were chaotic, Kardashians, Lohan. And then once you do that, you do something that is probably out of your comfort zone, but stretches you, moves you into different spaces that you probably aren't comfortable in. And then you kind of need a little bit of that to get everybody to talk a little bit about that. And I'm not saying go seek Charlie Sheen. I'm saying go find something
I
that...
hear that that's what you are saying. I hear go find Charlie Sheen.
Solid advice.
No, I'm simply saying, I'm simply saying, do something that might sound crazy. Take risks.
Yeah.
Everything, Lindsay Lohan pushed me out of a moving car in London. It's a great story. But it doesn't mean that it was safe. But I did eventually find clients that are not crazy. So you have to do things that are not necessarily
Are we
going
going to hear this full story? Or
You will talk about it. Maybe I should do a podcast episode about it.
That's for cocktails.
Yeah, that's for cocktails. But just, I have done a lot of crazy stuff just because I really needed to pay rent. And I also really needed to make sure that I was going to be able to run this business. It is scary to start a business after having been working my whole life to be in spaces. But the one reason that I started my business is because I had to get out of Editorial in 2011 because no one was listening to me that this was not going to, being a newsstand will not exist in a decade. And now we live in Los Angeles and there's no newsstands.
Yep.
One of the last ones just closed on Fairfax. We are literally right next to Genghis Khan, which is also closed. We have to really be quick to pivot And the moment I had the third boss say to me, that's ridiculous, that'll never happen. I said, I believe I know what I'm talking about, so maybe I should just go do what I'm talking about to myself and not have to deal with you. And that's it. All right.
Thank you so much.
Sorry.
I feel you, the editorial part,
Yeah.
because we are all about
It's hard.
pivot. Rebecca, I would like to go to you and ask you, as an agent, how do you choose who to get behind, especially, when they're just kind of getting going?
For sure. I mean, I feel like I have maybe the perfect story to tie into the scrappiness of this all. Sadly, I've not been pushed out of a car, but maybe metaphorically I have in my career. But about 4 years ago, I started working with my client, Reese Feldman, who's known online as Guy with a Movie Camera. He had been a PA on the set of The Marvelous Mrs. Maisel, and he broke every NDA he had ever signed in his life by sharing his experience online as a PA, which he fully should have been fired from. And instead of firing him, Amazon said, "We love what you're doing. We want to hire you to formally market the show, and we're not going to fire you." And it really launched him into this incredibly unique journey of his career in entertainment. And in the past 4 years, we've partnered with every major studio, every major award show. He's had conversations with some of the greatest filmmakers in the world. And, when we met 4 years ago, his real dream of what he wanted to do with his career was to become a filmmaker. And over the past 4 years, we've taken every step to get to that point, and kind of culminated in him premiering his first short film at Cannes Film Festival this past May.
Hey.
Thank you. But I think, to your question, Tracy, I think when we met 4 years ago, I understood that he, even in having his roots in digital, that he was a true creative, and we were going to get him to that point. And I think it all really just came from kind of a scrappy moment, if I'm being honest. So.
Yeah, I think those are the ones that work.
Scrappy and illegal.
Yes. Don't encourage illegal things. But, yeah.
You have to be willing to be fired.
Yeah.
Well, thank you for that. And I'm going to pivot a little bit because so much of success is kind of reliant on algorithms and AI now. And I can say from being in LGBTQ plus media that algorithms are not always kind to our content, and they don't want to share it all of the time. So I wonder, and I usually like to call on people, but I will throw this out to anyone who might have a story about getting around these algorithms that do not favor marginalized groups of people.
Yeah.
Great.
Say so.
Yeah.
I am Mexican and Italian, and when we were making our series for Netflix, one of the sketches that we wrote was called The Latinx Men, and it was about Latin superheroes who would save the day if they could agree on what to call themselves, and it was made specifically for English-speaking Latin people. And we found that when we were making these sketches and making this content through Netflix's Latin vertical, Con Todo, that it found its audience because we were being very, very specific. We have found that with social media, particularly with Instagram, like niche is actually king. I think somebody came up with that a couple years ago, and it's still true. The more that you know your audience and you can hone your content to your audience, I think the more the algorithm will find, because the algorithm is made to take your content and find the people who want to watch it. The more specific you are about it, the more it will find its audience, which is counter to what we have learned as filmmakers, as writers. If you're making a network show right now, if you're writing something, they don't want it to be niche, they want it to be as general as possible. But I actually think that there is something really valuable about using social media to hone your voice in that way, And then when you apply it to your pilot, when you apply it to your film, your voice, then you can, it's for a different medium, you can make it a little bit more general. But I do think that right now, the key is to find your niche audience, and the algorithm will do its job.
Yeah, thank you for that. Did anyone else want to comment on algorithms and marginalized communities?
Who wants to talk about being marginalized?
I mean, I talk about,
I mean, I can't speak for the clients because they all have built their audience and their audience follows them. Was the design. I think that for myself, I've spent a lot of time playing in sandboxes that you wouldn't typically expect to see me in. So I'm a huge horror fan, so I'm on a lot of horror podcasts. And I can speak knowledgeably about it, and you can get past the neckbeards when you can call shit out, right? So I strategically do things like that, play in sandboxes that is, resistant to having exposure to someone like a 45-year-old Black woman. But I mean, I'm a pop culture obsessee, so, being obsessed with different factions of pop culture in any topic that you're passionate about is helpful if you can reach across the aisle and get into a conversation with someone else. That will help the algorithm as well, because they are marginalizing against us. The AI is not really, favorable to us either. But I think if you spend enough time, again, building a community, but also being willing to sort of bring what you're good at to another space that might not seem like it makes sense, but you add value there, doing that as well.
yeah, thank you.
And I think the last thing that I'll add is that whenever anyone asks about advice about algorithms and how to, beat the algorithm, I tell them, don't. Because you can't. We don't control that. That's not in our control. The only thing you have control over is the content that you're creating. Keep creating that content, and the right people will find you.
That's great. Thank you. Thanks, everybody. I'm going to go back to you, Jessie. You talked a little bit about was tap dancing?
It's tap dancing.
I was trying to learn tap as an adult. It is not easy.
We'll talk after cocktails, story,
Yes,
tapping.
yes.
Great.
So would you share, that was a success, but I was going to ask all of you to share a success of branding a smaller project, and then maybe something that you thought would do really well and just didn't go anywhere.
I would say, that was a very shocking success for me. I was nobody, knew nobody, made something, and to get however many views it got and people have saw it and really responded to it, that was very meaningful to me. It wasn't even about the amount of eyeballs, it was just that people were really connecting to it, that I was like, oh my God, this is what I want to do. Like, I caught the bug for creating.
Yeah.
And then, it's funny because the not success, I don't know how many views People of New York has, but I wouldn't call it a not success because it's what led me to everything else. It led me to directing my first short, which has its California premiere here and just won the special jury mention at Tribeca. And I'm just feeling like I'm finally able to do what I've always wanted to do, and I can stand on my own 2 feet, and it's from those beginnings,
Thank you. And then, Rebecca, I'll go to you and ask you for you spoke of a success.
I have another one.
Yeah, I'm sure you have more. So a success, and then maybe something that just didn't work the way that you thought it might.
Yeah, I think another one of our favorite kind of tangible successes is our client, Chris Stuckman, who is a film reviewer on YouTube. He has a couple million YouTube subscribers, and he crowdfunded one of the most successful horror films to date, which is releasing this fall. It ended up being crowdfunded and then bought by Neon, who's now distributing it, which is really exciting.
Yeah,
I'm trying to
Neon.
think of an example of a less than success, but I think For Chris in particular, it was years and years of trying to convince people that he could be a filmmaker when he was, in the film reviewing space.
Yeah.
So I think that's a hurdle. That's just an example of something to keep pushing through. If someone isn't viewing you as like the particular, type of creative that you are, but that that's what you want to ultimately be. Same kind of example with Reese. I think it is just pushing through.
Yeah, thank you. How about for you, Wynter? Any particular successes or?
This is recent and petty. It's more, I don't like big conglomerates. And working on John's show, Everybody Live, he wanted me to just be the social person. He did not want anybody touching his platforms, and I had to loosen him up in doing things that he didn't like. He didn't like collabs. He didn't like to share other people's stories. He thinks that's like weird. And I explained to him why it's not weird. But we also edited a lot of the show content, and Netflix started copying us. And because they knew John liked it, and so they just basically started copying us. And I found that funny, and I consider that a success that they had to do what I say now. Because that's what he wanted, and that's what people, and it got more views and shares than their recaps. I would say that something I don't consider a success, and I like to look at it sometimes and have it stare in my face because it's funny, is I really thought that I could do a podcast on my own, just by myself, on video. I'm really busy, and I really want it, right? But I couldn't do it.
Yeah.
I was tired. I actually learned I don't like being on camera like that. And I realized that after 4 episodes, I just couldn't do it anymore. I didn't take them down. I let them sit right there. Because I need to be reminded that I thought I could do something and I didn't do it, but I tried. And that is, I had always been accustomed to somebody producing it and editing and doing all that stuff. And I really thought I can just do it all on my own with my own workload. But the thing that I like that failure happened is it reminded me of what I'm really passionate about and what I want to be doing for my personal self, and kind of helped me narrow my focus in that way. So it wasn't a failure. I think people enjoyed it. I just got tired of doing it after 4 weeks. So just knowing yourself.
Yeah, thank you.
And having to get slapped in the face with it sometimes.
Thank you. We are going to shift gears and actually go to audience questions because we want to make sure we have time for that. And we have some roaming mics. Who's got the microphone? So I see here was the first hand I saw up in the white.
Thank you. Okay, so this question is for anyone who wants to answer. I'm curious if you have clients that, due to their increased visibility, start receiving like unkind or hateful messages. What kind of advice do you give people for navigating being in the public space in a world that's not always there for you?
Actually, I could speak to this a little bit. So, just very quick, for those of you who don't know, I went viral for an interview I did with Cynthia Erivo and Ariana Grande for Wicked, Holding Space. If you've heard that, that's me. And it was wildly viral, and I was incredibly overwhelmed. By and large, the comments and the response were really positive, and it was like a lot of joy that was coming my way. And of course, I started to see negative comments about how the three of us were out of touch and we were crazy and, those things. But I will say, I didn't care. I did not care about the negativity. It wasn't for them. It wasn't for them. Because there was so much love and joy coming my way that I just didn't take it in. Even today, some people are like, oh, I just did a thing with Megan, the Megan film, and people are like, okay, let's move on. And I'm like, I don't really care about them because we're still having a good time. So anyway, my anecdotal experience is to lean into the positive of what you're seeing and not allow the negative to seep in.
I'll piggyback off that just to say, you can't make everyone happy. Like, whether you're a filmmaker, a wife, a mom, you're not gonna make everybody happy. It's impossible. It's impossible. So why should we be expected to make everybody happy just because we're putting ourselves out there? Just not possible. Like, let the standard just roll off your shoulders.
Also, have you seen those videos where someone will read the mean comment and then they'll show the picture of the person and it's like a full troll and you're just like, go off, sir.
Yeah.
You're fine, you know?
I mean,
It's usually a sir.
correct. I mean,
Not to stereotype.
I will say this, because I really want people to manage their emotional energy. If it is, because you can respond that way, which is always hilarious, because they always have reflective glasses. You know what I'm talking about, the wraparound blue blockers. That's the first sign. The other thing is, make sure you use the tools to block. Just block.
Yeah.
Sometimes it's even better to just do that. I have universal block terms on every single person's page, because people go deep and can cut. And I also really want people to manage their emotional energy on this stuff, because people say a lot of shitty stuff.
Yeah, yes, I just want to validate that. I was on a show as an actor that had like a very intense fan base, and I would get very nice messages, and then I would get like very creepy, scary messages from sirs, and I was and it was at first extremely unsettling, because all of a sudden you feel like you're in a spotlight that is very uncomfortable. Immediately blocking and being like, nope, like just like disappearing the message, disappearing the person, does give a little bit of just like a sense of control over the situation, and a sense that like it's just words, it's some like creep on the internet, and it gives you, like, as soon as you see it, just deleting, blocking, so that it doesn't stay inside you.
Yeah, great. I think I saw a question down, well, I'll go right over here to the aisle, the white shirt, and then I see some back there.
Yeah, actually to piggy off of that previous question, when talking about like engaging with community and forming community, I sometimes feel like there is a lot of nebulous that comes with that, where sometimes the idea of building community is oversharing of yourself, of your life, of what's going on, or even having to try to engage with people that may be starting to cross boundaries. But on the other time, sometimes some communities just seem to be okay with knowing that they're not going to know things of that, and how do you manage forming that kind of community, or forming what kind of community you want to foster? Because it sometimes feels like you have to either have like Discord, live streaming, constantly commenting, maybe having Patreon where you need to share every little detail of your life, but then sometimes how do you manage that from oversharing to managing what the community should know, they're getting into, engaging with yourself?
What are they getting into? I want to know. What are you giving them? I was really vocal about my fertility struggles during COVID and using Ozempic to lose weight to become more fertile. And that opened me up to an audience of people that this is a conversation that's not discussed and talked about enough. So I think like you have to be prepared. Are you ready to be an advocate? Are you ready to be influential in that space? You really have, I didn't want to talk about it. Like once I had with the conversation I needed, because we all needed community during COVID, but after a while I was like, this ain't my whole thing. You know, I'm a little bit more dynamic than that. So you have to, unfortunately, you need to be transparent about where your boundaries are and what you feel like sharing. And you know, during the podcast I created, I had a behind a paywall about my husband's recovery and sobriety, because I didn't want like SEO picking up all this stuff about so he can continue working. Nobody needs to the ins and outs of his road to sobriety, but you also have to again set yourself up for, is this the conversation that you want to keep having, and then how will you control the conversation in that space? And I think Discord, things kind of can be contained there, but I think if you want to create some audio and put it behind a paywall and just have it be a short-term thing, I'm only going to be talking about this is a limited time only, or this is a 4-part series, so you can move on and have a different conversation. And again, appearing on other people's podcasts so you can touch on that and then let it go. And people will always be like, oh, I loved hearing you on da-da-da, and talking about that one thing, but it allows you to preserve that boundary that you want to have of not becoming that thing. You know what I mean? Sometimes we have a tendency to take the opportunity that comes to us and just kind of go for it. I wrote an article in Cosmo. I was like, I never want to do this again because it just closed off. I would have rather put it an essay on my Substack. Now I know. So you also kind of have to like try and then know like what your boundaries are after the fact. Take them for all they have, get the opportunity, and then decide, and the next time, this is how I would carve it out so it feels better for me.
What is the value add there? Is it the right audience for this specific brand, the specific campaign? What are the goals that they're trying to accomplish? And making sure that the pitches are really curated to each campaign. So making sure to take the time to figure out like what the exact KPIs and the goals are. And I know that sounds like a lot of marketing jargon, but it genuinely is like what we think about as we're pitching our clients for these brand opportunities that a lot of the times come with big dollar signs, and they're being very, very mindful about who they're picking for these opportunities because there is a lot more eyeballs on this than there ever were before. I think again, when I started in this 10 years ago, it really was, oh, we have an extra $10,000. Let's work with a blogger and buy some blog space, and that was it. It is so different now. I mean, the main focus of a lot of these marketing campaigns are working with influencers and creators, and when you're pitching, any of these creators for these opportunities, it's about making sure that they're the right fit. I would, kind of the easy way that I explain my job to a lot of people is that I'm a matchmaker. So it's really about matching the right person with the right opportunity.
With that, I have been given the time, so I want to thank our incredible panelists for your insight, and I want to thank all of you for being here. Thank you for your great questions.
Thank you all so much. We're going to have our next panel at 2.